Well, welcome to the fourth edition of We Are Food People. My name is Danny Faulkner. I lead the restaurants and food service division, and today I'm joined by Jake, who is an F&B consultant across the wider Middle Eastern region for VSAG, headquartered in the States, and Legion, Chief People Officer for Kitopi. And today we're going to be talking about dark kitchens, the growing phenomenon of dark kitchens. So first and foremost, Jake, would you be able to give us a top line overview of what are dark kitchens?
Yeah, I mean, so dark kitchens really are any kitchen that's going to be running multiple virtual brands that don't rely on having a front of house or any heavy direct customer interaction in the sense of service and counter service or table service or any of that kind of stuff. Normally, you're running multiple brands out of those kitchens, and you don't have to really focus on having any set structure to it. You can do it out of an existing restaurant, or you can do it out of a kitchen out of Al-Quoz or a warehouse. So it's really just about getting as many brands under one roof as possible, and not having it branded as one individual restaurant.
Yeah, so I suppose on the virtual side, and then obviously, Legion, do you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, sure. I know when I first heard about dark kitchen, that was like 2-3 years ago, right? I always wondered, why is it called dark kitchen? And as you guys might know, there are, several other names to it, right? They call it ghost kitchen.
Yeah.
Ghost kitchen because the customers don't know that it exists. It's somewhere in the background. And they also call it virtual kitchen because it's, there is a lot of tech enablement, powering the virtual brands. And of course, it's called dark kitchen. And my best assumption why it's called dark, virtual, or ghost kitchen is simply because it does not have to be in a prime real estate, right? If you think about it. And so that is a big advantage for being a cloud kitchen. Dark kitchen doesn't mean that it's dark, Dark kitchen is basically means it can be even, underground, 5 floors down. So where, the people who are operating dark kitchen or cloud kitchen, they can acquire a real estate that doesn't have to be a prime location. It could be a B or C or a D location with the right infrastructure, if a restaurant needs a $3,000 per square feet, a cloud kitchen can have even $1,000 per square feet. That's a great advantage of having a cloud kitchen, and that's how I think the name originated from.
Yeah.
This is not an official definition. This is Legion's disclaimer there.
Of course. So because this is changing the F&B landscape, I think, as we know it, it's quite an exciting trend, phenomenon, whatever you want to call it. On behalf of I suppose from a restaurant operator's perspective, from a brand's perspective, how do dark kitchens benefit their business from an operational or from a revenue perspective? How does the brand benefit, Legion?
Okay, so and I think if you think of a brand, right? So the brand come in different shapes and sizes and forms, right? One is your well-established brand, and you have a brick and mortar restaurant, right? And what is happening if you look at the trend? Most of your dine-in sales are cannibalized by delivery, okay? And there are restaurants who are virtual restaurants, so they don't have a brick and mortar, so they are, make most of their businesses from virtual customers. But of course, if you look at what conventional way of restaurant business is, basically you have a dining experience, right? Mm. And that is really changing. And if you look at any of the reports out there, in US it's growing really fast, and Europe is growing fast. Even like, for example, Jamie Oliver restaurant shut down because of this phenomenon, right? And when certain portion of the delivery business are moving into delivery, right? So let's say, for example, you have 100% of the business, people are walking in as a dine-in customer. Now from that 100%, 25-30% has moved to a delivery, right? Now the restaurants have to invest in the new infrastructure, so you may have to set up a new call center. You have to have the logistics. You need to have the different post integration system and so on and so forth. Or you can work with aggregators. And aggregators, of course, you like it or not, they will take 30-40% of the basket, as a commission. So therefore, you have a problem there, okay? Now the business is going to deliver you like it or not, all right? And now you cannot make a profit. And most restaurants are making loss from this 25-30% of the business. And so how Cloud Kitchen or how Kitopi can really help you is you don't have to worry. We take care of everything. And you can get a healthy margin, let's say 10 to 13% of the commission, whereby the industry standard, even if you do a dine-in business, you make only 5-6%.
And from, I suppose, from a consumer's perspective, Jake, how does it benefit the consumer, or from what they see, how does it benefit them? Is it ease of access to various different brands, multiple different brands? What, from a consumer's perspective?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think a lot of it is just you're able to get a lot more out there in terms of food and brands, and like Legion said, access, either whether it's through the aggregators or different apps that the brands themselves are coming up with, or any of that kind of the online ordering through WhatsApp or Instagram or any of those types of things. You're just able to get access to a lot more faster. So there is a lot more variety without necessarily having the concentration of restaurants that you would in, for example, like on the Boulevard. A lot of those spaces are now turning into retail, or they're turning into grocery stores or any of those types of things. So you still have the same number of brands out there. You just don't necessarily have the restaurant footprint that you previously had. What
effect does that have on, I suppose, brand loyalty? Does that reduce brand loyalty if the market's being flooded with new brands or access to existing brands in different locations? How does that affect brand loyalty to some of the larger businesses?
Yeah, we've been seeing a trend of brand loyalty in the sense that what we've noted in the past kind of going away anyways. It's a very heavy, especially in COVID-19, but even before all the COVID stuff happened, brand loyalty was kind of the end game, but it was not nearly the bigger percentage of your clients as what it was before. So I think it is going to eat into that, and it's going to continue to eat into that until we see some balance of what all of that's going to look like. But I think that as long as you're hitting your delivery times, your food's consistent, you're hitting all of those quality metrics, people are going to eat where they like, and they're going to always, at the end of the day, we're creatures of habit. So they're going to go back to where they feel comfortable with the brands that they feel comfortable with.
Okay, nice. And I suppose from your side, Legion, how do dark kitchens benefit the larger F&B industry I suppose in a macro sense? How do dark kitchens benefit the economy?
Yeah, so the way I look at it, right, dark kitchens are not competition to restaurants, right? It's a perfect marriage, I would call it, or an extension of what the restaurants are. And as I told you, to your first question, the brick and mortar restaurant or restaurant business in general, they are struggling to make profit out of their delivery business. And this is where, Kitopi Kitchen can come in and support you. You can focus on your dining customers. And if you're a virtual restaurant, because you're very good in acquiring customers and creating the virtual brand from a marketing perspective, and you don't have to really worry about operations. So I think, company like Kitopi Cloud Kitchen is a kind of an accelerator or a catalyst to the restaurant F&B industry, and that's the best way.
Okay, and what can they do? What can they do to assist underperforming brands? So if I personally had a brand, I wasn't a large global player, for example, I might have 2 or 3 restaurants in Dubai, and I'm struggling with footfall, struggling to market the business appropriately. I might have strong locations, but something isn't working. How could you as Kitopi or as a dark kitchen operator assist me in terms of?
Yeah. So again, as you know, so I cannot generalize Cloud Kitchen, but what Kitopi we do is, we don't really do a lot of support in terms of marketing and acquiring customers. Of course, we support it indirectly by providing a higher level of service than what you would do generally, or what is the baseline in the market. But we do not really help you directly to create a brand image, right? And that is something that the brand have to have. The brand that working with us, what we ask for is they have a good customer base and a good brand reputation in terms of customer rating. If you're a virtual brand, or if you are a brick and mortar restaurant, you have a brand presence, and as well as good loyal base.
Yeah. Okay. I suppose obviously if you did have those 3 restaurants, you're right there.
Yeah, I have a fly came through the balcony, and
if I did have those 3 restaurants that were underperforming, I suppose using cloud kitchen operators such as Kitopi, I would be able to target a different demographic. I would imagine, not a different demographic, a different region, a different area of Dubai. So that could actually raise my brand profile as well across different areas, different regions of Dubai. So I suppose that would be advantageous.
Yeah, so definitely that's the biggest advantage, working with Kitopi, right? If you are 1 or 2, 3 restaurant mom and pop shop, right, and you're very good in creating customer experience either through food or through services. You come to Kitopi. We don't just take you within Dubai. You can go from one of Dubai to all parts of Dubai, and we can also take you to like Abu Dhabi, where we have a good presence, and in the future we will have Sharjah and other demographics. So we can give you full penetration of UAE as a market.
Nice.
Not only we can take you to Saudi Arabia, we can take you to Kuwait, and we can also take you to international locations, right? And what is great about that relationship is the brands don't have to invest heavily, right? Because you don't have to invest in a location, you don't have to invest in equipment, you don't have to invest in people and training and so on. All you have to do is you're already plugged with Kitopi. With a switch of a button, we can take you, nationwide and internationally.
International, yeah, huge. Jake, what do you think are the challenges, I suppose, that potential dark kitchen operators could face in this region? Not necessarily just due to COVID, but in terms of the model. It's a new model. It's obviously growing. What are the challenges for those operators?
Well, actually, I think the biggest thing that's going to come out of COVID is that every kitchen is going to start operating like a dark kitchen, because one of the things that with all the virtual brands you're able to do is offset a lot of your either losses or your revenues. You're able to cross-utilize product by getting different brands out of what was putting out one brand. So now you're able to actually put out a bunch of virtual brands, and you're seeing people do it all the time out of all the different restaurants in Dubai. So I think if anything, COVID and the lockdowns are really going to drive that home, because the actual social distancing and, whether we're going to be able to open with 30 or 50 or 80% occupancy, anytime soon is really going to make an impact on all of that. And it's going to drive people into either utilizing, companies like Kitopi, or taking their own kitchens and turning it into a dark kitchen, whether they're operating their own brands or whether they're operating other brands for other people. I think the biggest thing that they're going to have when it comes to those types of operations is actually getting in there and understanding how to cross-utilize your product, how to cross-utilize your staff, how to cross-utilize your equipment, managing your throughput. Because as soon as you start putting 3 brands out of what was just putting out one, you could easily triple your menu items quite quickly. And if you're not ready for that, you can run into some serious kitchen delays or any of those. So I think that's one side of it. And with all the virtual brands coming and moving into like Kitopi or the Deliveroo dark kitchens or any of those types of things, I think they're gonna, as the market's shifting, I think that the biggest thing that they're going to be dealing with is, as Legion said earlier, is the fees from the aggregators, because it scales with your business model, and like if 35% of your revenue is getting eaten immediately, either that's going to drive your prices up, or you're going to have to figure out how to get your own logistics in-house and really work it that way. So I think that there's going to be some difficulty for more of the new entrants into the dark kitchen space on that side than the existing people that are already there. But I do think that those are going to be kind of the barriers that they're going to be running into.
Right. I've always thought, obviously, with virtual brands, if you're creating these brands, so you have a kitchen space and you're running 3-4 brands from this space, you can essentially create your menus, your items across all these 4 different brands. But if you're Kitopi, for example, and you're partnering with 10, 15 different brands who have various different SKUs, logistically and from a storage perspective, that must be quite a struggle. Is that a problem that you have to overcome, dealing with so many different SKUs from so many different brands in terms of storing it, keeping it, and then keeping it fresh, prepare it, sending it out? Is there a logistical nightmare there for you, Legion? Sorry,
Legion. I was going to say, I think that's probably better for you to answer.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's a great question, Danny. And so I see that as a blessing for Kitopi, right? Barrier to entry is so high because of the fact you just mentioned, right? We like, for example, in UAE, we are already working with 100 brands, okay? So even if you take an average of 30 menu items and average of 50 ingredients per item, and I know there will be some unique SKUs, but there are unique SKUs. So you're literally talking about 20,000 SKUs, yeah. Okay? Even convenience stores and retail brands don't manage those many SKUs. But again, so yeah, it is a very complex business, and this is to an advantage, especially for Kitopi. That's why nobody wants to enter this business. And at Kitopi, we've already mastered that from a supply chain management point of view. So, and I think, if you think of it, the business model itself is very tough. So we took upon all of the difficult tasks that nobody wants to do, right? One is the supply chain management, and another one is the production, right? You have to pre-prepare some of the food and send to the SK. And the SK is basically a kitchen operation, which is also a very tedious task because it has to be produced within 20 minutes because customer expects their food within 30 minutes. That is kind of the norm. And then you also have to worry about last mile, right? The food can be ready, but the drivers aren't ready. So this is like 4 or 5 industries, coming together to create the customer experience. And that is why it's so difficult, to be in and to do it really well.
Yeah, I can imagine that's quite a tough challenge to overcome. One of the biggest, I suppose, within that. Jake, I know that you do a lot within, you enter various different restaurants, you have a look at structures, you have a look at, the training development piece of the team, whether they're, competent, need upskilling. But I suppose in the sense of dark kitchens, because it is new, we're not necessarily identifying people, maybe now because it's 2-3 years old, but if we go back a year or 2 ago, we weren't necessarily identifying people specifically from dark kitchen businesses for dark kitchen businesses. So what can you do, what can the industry do to train, develop their employees to make sure that they're fully prepared to be successful in a role within dark kitchens?
That's a good question. I think, when it comes down to it, just kind of the nuts and bolts of whatever good kitchen management is always going to be the same, whether it's a dark kitchen or whether it's, a brick and mortar restaurant a lot of that doesn't actually change. You still have to handle a certain number of orders coming in. You have to handle the rush. You have to handle cross utilization of product. All of those don't really change. The biggest thing that changes is, the dark kitchens obviously operate with quite a different kitchen layout, mostly because you have to double up on equipment, depending on what kind of dark kitchen you're running, obviously. But a lot of times you have to double up on equipment to manage multiple brands, or you have to be able to put, if you're doing, for example, fried chicken, you've got to be able to put it out of the fryers, and maybe that fried chicken's on 3 different brands. So then it's about managing where all of that is going. So the logistical side of it is more on what I'd consider like the expediter side, and making sure that the food's actually coming to the locations together, that it's getting into the right bags together, that it's all going out, and that nothing's getting kind of mixed. So there is a lot more coordination that needs to go through it. And pretty much everybody in the kitchen needs to be a jack of all trades. They need to be trained on all of the equipment, all the recipes. They need to be able to put stuff out, because you can't have somebody just run a grill and have it work in a dark kitchen. It just doesn't function that way. So if people are sick or anything like that, they need to be able to bounce across all the different brands. So there's a lot more training that goes into it. And they definitely have to move around the stations a lot earlier, but like I said, the nuts and bolts of it are all pretty much the same. The coordination side on getting the food out is a little bit more complex, but it's no different than making sure it's all going out to the tables in the correct order, and with the correct timings. So
have you found, Legion, that there's been quite a steep learning curve for new employees into Kitopi that have come from maybe your typical branded restaurant operations? Has it been a larger development training piece than it would be if someone just goes from one brand to another? It's been difficult to train and educate.
Yeah, so definitely, right. At the end of the day, it's business economics, right? If you think of it, if you're from a pizza brand, or if you're a pizza chef, you learn how to make pizza, or if you're a salad chef, you're good in salad. If you're a sushi chef, you're good in sushi. If you're Italian, you make Italian food. And as Jake mentioned, right, cross-utilization of labor is very key. But at the same time, right, brand trusts our brand, to produce the food with utmost integrity of what the brand represents to the customer. So it's also important. So it's about having the right balance, right? At the end of the day, this is where people, are very important, and the training is so important. While keeping the food integrity, we also need to make sure that cross-utilization of labor, cross-utilization of the equipment without cross-contamination. And, so the proof is in the pudding. At the end of the day, what comes as a throughput, it's very, very critical. And what happens behind the scene is all about optimization. So.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. If I was a brand, whether I had 10 restaurants, 1 restaurant, what do I need in place to be able to partner with Kitopi? Do I need to have my brand standards, brand manuals all in place and come to you, fully operational, or what's the process for a business to partner with a dark kitchen, Legion?
Okay, so I'm not very qualified to answer the question, but I'll answer that to the best of my knowledge. So just to put a disclaimer out there. So definitely, what we look for from the brand is their, well reputable brand, which is basically loved by customers, right? If you don't have a customer base coming to Kitopi, you're not really helping us, and you're not helping yourself, right? Okay. If you go live, there has to order come through. Okay, if the order doesn't come through, you're taking a space in the cloud, in one of our kitchen, and all the SKUs are sitting, and you're not producing any profit, right, or any revenue for you or for Kitopi. So therefore, number 1 criteria is you need to have a good customer base.
Okay.
Okay, either in one area or multiple area or internationally.
Okay.
So when you plug with us and when you go live through the aggregator and through your brick and mortar, so there has to be a high volume. Okay, how Kitopi creates value to the brand is to fulfilling the order, within 25 minutes, which is the standard that we set internally. This is not something that we advertise. and we try to, provide the quality of food better than the brand they can do for themselves in the delivery area. So what we are solving for is not creating the demand. What we are solving for is fulfilling the demand better than anyone else.
Okay, right. And Jake, is there anything I suppose you want to add to that? I suppose you've worked with a few different virtual brands involved in creating virtual brands. Is there anything, if I wanted to create a virtual brand, what do you think would be the best process for me? Obviously, I wouldn't be able to go to Kitopi because it needs to be established, need a customer base. Would I be able to create a virtual brand and approach dark kitchen operators to be able to run that brand out, or is that not possible at all?
No, it is. It's possible. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of people doing that. And they're going to be pitching virtual brands that can help underperforming kitchens get, more revenue going into them. We're already starting to see it with some people approaching hotels and things like that, trying to utilize whether it's their banquet kitchens or, the restaurant kitchens that are underperforming right now because of the occupancy crunch. So I think we're going to continue to see that. I think that the process is really the same as what you would go through for any brand, right? You create the brand, you create the brand imagery, you create the brand values, you create the menu, you go through, you do your menu costing, your menu tasting, all of that kind of stuff. The biggest difference is if you're going to go into a dark kitchen and somebody else is going to be executing the brand, your processes and your recipes specifically have to be detailed enough that somebody like Kitopi or any of these other dark kitchens, or even if you just, even if it's in your own kitchen, it needs to be detailed enough that people can execute it without you physically having to be there to make sure that they're doing it. And, like Legion said, in a lot of cases, then they can actually take it and produce it better than what it would be coming out of your kitchen. So I think that the documentation side of it needs to be a lot more structured than what it would be if you're running just a brick and mortar on your own. It's a little bit, we run into a lot of clients who have brick and mortars that don't have even recipe cards. You can't do that if you're going to be pitching a virtual brand where somebody else is going to be running. It just doesn't function that way. So I think the biggest piece to that is making sure that it's structured in a way that somebody can take it and run it without necessarily having you be there to even do the training. And that's probably the most difficult part about building the virtual brand.
No, fine. No, thank you very much. Legion, what's your favorite restaurant? Have you actually had time to go out and eat in Dubai recently?
And again, as you know, my answer would be McDonald's. So.
Yeah, of course it would. Of course it would. Yeah, coming from that.
I'm still very loyal to my previous brand.
Yeah, no, fair.
Yeah, I like Indian food, and I like to cook a lot. And I cook all sorts of food, Italian and Indian at home. So,
what's your favorite Indian meal to cook?
I'm not sure if you heard of chicken tikka masala.
Obviously.
Every English bloke should know that, right?
Yeah.
British national food, right?
It is. I think it is, yeah. That's actually my favorite curry as well.
Yeah. Where are you from, Jake? Are you from UK as well?
No, I'm actually from the US, Colorado originally. So.
Okay.
Yeah. No chicken tikka masala, but I cannot say that it's something that I grew up eating.
Favorite restaurant, Jake?
Actually right now I've been enjoying cooking at home because obviously with the consulting side of it, I travel so much. But I do love Streetery out of JLT and Vietnamese foodies downtown. I've been ordering from them when I've been ordering out. Poke I like a lot for kind of quick and easy. But yeah, for the most part, I've actually been spending my time in lockdown, actually doing some cooking and enjoying not having to be in a plane.
So it's a new trend, isn't it? Cooking at home.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Stay safe, look after yourself. And I'm sure we'll touch base soon.
All right. Sounds good. Stay safe, guys.
Thanks, Danny. Nice meeting you, Jake. Bye.